Welcome to Power of the Tribe podcast. I'm your host, John Connors. I'm also the founder and head instructor of Connors Martial Arts here in Norwood, Massachusetts. We teach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai kickboxing, and mixed martial arts. It's February 7th, 2020, and I'm here with my co-host, Dan Robin.
How you doing, John?
Dan looks very fashionable today. He looks awesome.
Yeah, like I said, I think we should have a dress code for the podcast from now on.
I'm trying to dress better because I figure physically I'm declining like every day, every moment. So if I can up my wardrobe, I might balance off some of that.
So eventually you're just going to be in a tuxedo every day. You're just going to look horrible. You just feel like I better put on like a full tuxedo
right.
today.
Expensive, large sunglasses, expensive hat, a scarf. So you just try to minimize
almost none of your actual
appearance.
Your own self is showing.
Yeah, I'll end up just wearing a mask. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't felt great this I'm kind of low energy week. I think I
sensed a little low energy when you walked in here.
I think I got like a little coronavirus, I think.
You got a little coronavirus?
A little, like a mild
touch of it?
Yeah, mild coronavirus.
I suspect you'd be somebody who's more of a carrier than somebody who would suffer from it. You just spread it.
I'm not sure exactly what that means, but it could be true.
It means you have a strong constitution.
I could see that. I could see just sort of shrugging it off a little bit. I read a thing, though, that just a quick coronavirus take, which is that like there's 550 coronavirus deaths so far in the world.
All right.
Mostly in China. In that time period, 10,000 flu deaths in the United States. Just by way of comparison.
That's hard to believe. So
10,000
people died in what period of time, Dan? Like a month?
A few months, I think.
I didn't know that. And is it mostly elderly people?
Yes.
And
also some infants. So it's
infants.
It's, first of all, if you're elderly, you don't want to die either. So it's bad, but it's like
it's bad.
It's infirm.
I just don't want to
sound like minimize it. Like, oh, so what? They're all old and young and infirm, but. I think there's just a mistaken idea. I think coronavirus is the same thing. I don't think, that one in 20,000 healthy people will die from it. But same with the flu. Like I think coronavirus is basically a flu.
Yeah.
This is going to look really bad if the world is like destroyed and there's like an apocalypse based on the
people are going to be very upset with you. If
that's a good point.
2/3 of the
that's a good point. I can say what I want because if 2/3 are dead, they're not going to get mad about the podcast, right?
You never know.
Plus, our listener will probably have our listeners.
We'll lose 2/3 of our listeners. Damn it.
I think we have hardy listeners. I bet we only lose 1/3.
I think you're right. I saw on Facebook, I think, this article. I don't know how legitimate it is. It had a picture of a man in a bed, and it said the doctor who originally warned the world about coronavirus dies from the virus at age 34.
I saw that.
Do you think that's legitimate?
I don't know. I mean, it sounds not legitimate from what I just said, that it's basically a flu. Right. So why are you dying?
He's 34 years old. He looks healthy.
Yeah, so I don't know. I did. So all that. So
I do think it's good that we question everything that we read.
So as much as I'm like, oh, it's just a flu. My son was supposed to leave in a couple months for China.
Oh, right.
And I actually called it off. Like at first I didn't. I was like, look, it's just a flu. But you know what?
But here's the thing, Dan.
I'm not crazy. In the end, I'm like, you know what? Like, if the CDC is advising don't go to China, and
here's what I'm more afraid of than the actual virus. You get over there, and they go, "Hey, you're going to be quarantined."
Yeah,
and the Chinese government grabs you. You never know when you're getting back.
Yeah, that's.
You could be over there for the rest of your goddamn life.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
I saw a thing where a cruise ship, I think with 1,000 people on board. 10 of them had coronavirus, so they took the 10 off, and now they're quarantining the ship for 2 weeks. It's like sitting at a port someplace. Here's the thing. What if after 2 weeks they go in there and there's 10 more people with coronavirus? Yeah. That means they have to sit there for another 2 weeks. They literally can never get off. And maybe they'll be on that ship for years.
You'd think there'd be a way to be like, can you test me for coronavirus and let me off this ship? Or, you know what I mean?
They'll probably develop that, right?
I don't know.
I mean, that horrifying. Getting on a cruise ship is horrifying enough anyways. But the fact that I might be quarantined on there with potential coronavirus. Think about it,
because for my son, I was like, why don't you go to Taiwan instead? But now I'm thinking you could get stuck at Taiwan, right?
Well, here's the other thing, Dan. I don't think there's like direct flights to any place you want to go. And there's all people moving around there. Yeah, I would not do it. No
Tokyo.
way.
How about Tokyo? Is that far enough? That seems far enough.
Maybe. I don't know.
I can't imagine you're stuck in Tokyo, because that's
Tokyo's
like
probably better.
to your point. Like
you can go if you flew to Tokyo. Yeah, you would fly. You would
All
stop
those-
in Canada and go
all
to
those
Tokyo.
billionaires flying in and out. They're like, we're not being quarantined. You know what I mean? Like, it would be very hard to be a quarantine for flights in and out of Tokyo. Do you know what I mean? Like, the whole
Yeah.
world.
I think
flies in
Tokyo's a
and out.
little different because you're gonna go.
Yeah.
You're gonna approach it
Yeah,
going west.
and also, even if coronavirus is just a flu, I picture like you don't want to get the flu and be like, I'm in Beijing and like I can't get out. Who knows what sort of medical facilities you have? People can't get. I can't get over there to visit my kid if he's really sick. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a mess. So you got to call it off.
I totally agree. That's what I would.
All that said, it is still, in my opinion, just a bad flu, right?
I have no idea.
Like I said, if when we're all running around eating each other and cannibals and tribes, this is going to seem silly. But you make a good point. If that's happening, probably people aren't going to criticize me. I'm probably not going to be reading like posts about the podcast
Someone's
at that
gonna
point
be
going
wagging.
like, well, that's pretty.
Some zombie's going to be wagging their zombie finger at you.
Yeah. I was like picturing zombies at my door and me reading reviews of the podcast like, well, this is pretty harsh. Anyway, coronavirus. So bottom line, I have a little coronavirus, but I'm all right.
Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, what do you look at? Dimitri, when he walked in, I was thinking he was at a 6.75 today.
I'd say that's about accurate.
Wow. We got him off to 7.
Well, let's round it.
You want to round it up?
Yeah.
Okay. Thought I had you in a loophole there. So, I thought we would talk about the Kickstarter we have for this.
Big news.
Big news. We have the Invincible Mind documentary film is being edited now, and we have a Kickstarter and a Kickstarter trailer about the movie.
Let's tell everyone what the movie is.
Dan, I don't know. These guys followed me around for 3 years, filming my life. I felt like I was on the Truman Show.
Right.
Yeah.
And with your life, there's a life of a lot of people that are associated with the gym and a lot of other fighters.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not in the documentary, by the way.
Yeah, you were censored out of the
Yeah,
documentary.
I was cut. All my scenes were cut.
Yeah, I'm
I know.
sorry.
I shouldn't have been nude for all that. I should have worn clothes at that time, too. No, I was never interviewed. I was never part of it.
You were never interviewed.
No.
Yeah.
Because it was following the...
That
it
was a
following,
strategic.
It was like, yeah, we had a long discussion about that. You're like, yeah, there were many requests for you to be interviewed. But so this podcast is not even mentioned in the documentary, as far as you know.
The podcast isn't?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Because
But
they never filmed us, right?
there
Or
was
did they?
talk
When-
of
when they
filming
came
us.
in, when he
I don't know.
came in?
Dimitri, did the guys come in with the cameras? They never came in.
Well, we had that one guest that was
We had
your friend.
my
who-
Mark Vignali,
who's-
who's,
yeah.
if you go to the Kickstarter, Invincible Mind, you'll see his. I think you'll see his
his
picture.
bio near the bottom.
Yeah, he's the co-producer, Mark Vignali.
So he was...
Let me read his thing. Co-producer Mark Vignali graduated Harvard with John Connors. He began his creative career in New York City as a personal assistant to John Madden.
Did you know
John
that?
Madden, yeah.
Okay.
Oh my God, he has the funniest friggin' stories. So when we went to college, he was on the football team. John Madden's son was on the same football team. A really nice guy. Mark was the tailback of the team. He was all Ivy football player. You know, a real star of the team, more or less. You know, not the star, but you know, big
A good
big
player.
star, good player. And John Madden needed a personal assistant. So people, I don't know if everybody remembers John Madden, but he did Monday Night Football. He was
Everyone knows him from the video game now, but
Oh,
I'm
right,
not sure
right.
everyone that's younger remembers him.
he was a broadcasting superstar.
Yeah.
Like the biggest broadcaster in sports, easily, I would say, right?
For I'd say a good 10-year
10
period.
years, yeah. He was afraid of flying. He took a
Yeah.
bus everywhere somehow
Yeah.
and covered NFL football games. So he needed a personal assistant, Dan, somebody who could make sure his schedule was right, his dry cleaning got done, like everything he needed. And this was a very coveted position because you'd be working with one of the most powerful people
Yeah, it's an
in entertainment
into the industry.
and it was just a springboard to whatever the hell you wanted to do. Unfortunately, Mark was probably personality-wise, the worst person to take such a position. He's just not like that kind of detailed guy.
Is he not organized, or is he?
That's not his strengths. I mean, he's an amazing guy. He's my spiritual advisor. We had him on here as a couple of episodes he's been on, actually.
Right, so he was once in the studio and once more recently called in.
He called in, right. But I'll leave him to tell the stories. He's just so funny. So he did theater training. He worked at ICM.
But were we filmed when he was in the studio? I don't remember it ever being filmed.
I don't think we did. I think that we were thinking about it, but it never happened. He's just a very interesting guy. He taught in northern India for many years, and he was a teacher here in the United States. And he just knows more about different religions and cultures almost anybody I know. I would call him a modern-day Joseph Campbell. So for folks who aren't familiar with Joseph Campbell, you could Google Joseph Campbell.
That'd be a good thing to Google, probably.
He's on YouTube, I think, and you can watch videos where he got interviewed by David Moyers, I think. Yeah, Joseph Campbell. And he has written a bunch of books, A Hero with 1,000 Faces. And so he popularized the phrase, follow your bliss, and popularized the concept of the hero's journey. Just a fascinating guy. And Mr. Mark Vignali is what I would consider the 2020 version of Joseph Campbell. So he's the co-producer.
One off question about just that you mentioned that since he was a prominent football player, you wrestled at Harvard. Were you with like a jock crowd when you were at Harvard?
A little bit.
Like, did they house you all together?
Roommates, so we had.
Because I had a friend there that was an athlete, and he was housed. Everyone in his room.
No, we didn't house necessarily in a jock house. No.
Well, I don't know how it worked. I just know that he talked about his roommates, and they were all football players and soccer players and
well, now that
lacrosse
you mention
players, and
I think we had a big rooming group. So let me go through it in my head. I think 4 of them were football players.
That's not coincidence, right?
One was a swimmer. One is like a tennis player, but he didn't play at Harvard, I don't think. And me, I think that was. And then we had a couple people come through the rooming group and leave that were not athletes. No. But yeah, would you consider that a jock group?
Yes.
Okay.
4 football players, and it doesn't sound like a coincidence unless it's like just to get into Harvard, you pretty much have to be good at you have to have academics and athletics.
I think our connection was more socioeconomic, I bet, than athletics, but probably that probably had a factor in it too. So yeah.
All right.
But they're all successful people doing interesting various things.
Yeah. But moved on from athletics, I'm assuming.
Moved on from
mostly,
athletics.
Other than yourself.
Except for me.
Yeah.
I got stuck in it.
Yeah.
So they're doing this Kickstarter. They're trying to raise $9,000, Dan, for the editing, I guess, of the film. And so far, pretty exciting.
I'm not sure that everyone listening knows about the film at all. They followed you for 3 years.
Followed me for 3 years.
They followed a bunch of fighters from the gym.
Yep.
And the one sentence summary is what? I'd say it's following the ups and downs of fighting and paralleling that to the ups and downs of life. How's that for a one-off summary?
I think that's pretty good, Dan. Yeah, I think if you watch the trailer, you'll find it interesting. And you watched it. I finally watched it. I was feeling self-conscious, so I didn't want to watch it. But, yeah, and I mean, I think it's part of it's emphasizing what happens when we lose. There's so many stories of winners, and this person beat these unbeatable odds. But for all of us, there's a lot of losses in our lives. There's nobody's on a 100% winning streak. You know what I mean? So what do you do when you come up short? I think that's an interesting question.
Right. And MMA and very close jiu-jitsu is a very raw form of it, right? You're just like, I lost.
Absolutely.
Like, it was me and one other person. It's not a team sport, and I lost.
Yeah.
And it makes
you go into an MMA fight
really hard. It's really,
and you get beat up, you get knocked out. it's hard to rationalize that, you know. I've said it before. If I'm playing baseball against somebody and they beat me, I can say, yeah, but I could kick his ass. I can always use that as a rationalization.
Well, even for also in a team sport, even if you're the one you threw the interception, you could say, you know, why couldn't my defense hold him? You know, even
or the receiver didn't run the right route correctly, or he should have came back for the ball.
If you go 0 for 4 in baseball, you could go, why didn't someone else step up? Why didn't our pitcher step up? You know, like there's that element of team sports.
Yeah, you can't foist the blame of a loss in combat sports over to somebody else. Very hard.
It's a lot harder.
Yeah.
Plus what you're saying too, that it's right in your face. Like you're like, I lost. It's not, you can't blame someone, and you can't, you know, you can't rationalize. You know, I guess you can always rationalize. You can say, if I got more sleep, or if the ref did this or that, but it's a pretty raw version.
Dan,
of
you know what is a bitter pain that I don't hear people discuss too much? Here's the pain. You commit yourself 100% toward a goal. You work as hard as possible, prepare as well as possible. You get out there, you put on the best performance you can do, and you come up short. That sucks. Right. You know what I mean?
The only ingenious conversation that touched on this was on, of course, this podcast, which was because especially in fighting, but in all life, most of the advice you hear involves like go 110%, never give up, never quit, never, you know, like it's sort of that.
And then they tell you the price you pay is all the hard work you put in, all the pain you endure.
Right.
And the pain during the performance.
And if you, and all the pain during practice is made up for when you win.
Right.
And it doesn't sort of address, but you could still lose. Right.
What else it doesn't address, Dan, is there's another pain, the pain when you lose.
Yeah, right.
So now you got that pain. And it's almost an existential pain because you said, I just gave my very best. That's as best as I can do, and it's not good enough. And you have to reconcile yourself with that.
Right.
That's tough.
And as we always point out, it's not just fighting, right? This could be starting a business or writing a novel or anything else, or a relationship where you feel the same thing. You're like, I actually didn't slack off. I worked hard, and like it just didn't.
I heard Jordan Peterson talking about it. So a woman rejects a man romantically. You know what she's essentially saying to him? Your genetic lineage should end right here. We've had enough of you. The universe has had enough of all of this genetic material you're walking around with. We got to put a stop to it now. That's what she's saying.
I know. And it also can be like, and I know you well. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, if someone breaks up after a date, you're like, well, they didn't even know me.
They didn't get to know me. Right. You go out with somebody for 3 years and they dump you. They're saying, I think I know you pretty well, and we should just stop right here. Right. Your genetic line should stop now. And
you're sitting there going, they do actually know me pretty well. Like,
that's a bitter pill. That's tough. Yeah. So that's why that's the most painful rejection possible, I think. I don't know, or one of them. It's right up there.
But I think it's an interesting topic because I think it's deeper. It's the next step in thought for beyond saying you need to give everything 110%. You never give up. You need to. It's too simplified. The next step is, and what if you still don't make it? Like, what if you still don't succeed? And I think people are very often unprepared for that because all they've heard is that first part of it, that first type of advice. Yeah. Like, if you just give 100 and not only give 110%, related inspiration is like, I'm going to be the best in the world. I can't lose. I will be the best ever. And it's like you're encouraged, like keep telling yourself that.
Yeah. Have unreasonable confidence.
So then it's very hard. We've touched on it here before with someone like Ronda Rousey.
Right.
Was very good at telling herself that all the time. But she was told when she lost, she didn't know what to do. You know.
But here's the thing, Dan. She probably performed until she lost. She probably performed better than she might have because of that attitude.
Because of the confidence.
And you know what? I think she's doing pretty good right now. Yeah. She's probably making a boatload of money in professional wrestling.
I think she did come around eventually, you know.
No, she switched sports or switched from sports to entertainment. But I think she's
having actual success.
She's making a barrel of money over there, I think. I have no idea, but
I heard her recently talk about MMA, and I think she's sort of come to terms. I'm not a Ronda Rousey expert, you know what I mean? Like I sort of skimmed an article, but it sounded like she's still not in pain all the time. which is what she initially sounded like when she lost.
Oh yeah,
You know, every interview sounded bitter and angry and lost.
yeah,
I think she's kind of maybe this is the success in the WWE.
yeah. Having a good life,
Yeah.
making money, and being healthy. Life is good. But here's the thing, Dan. It boils down to this philosophical question: do I want to have that mountain of pain? And we'll include in that mountain of pain the pain of losing and the frustration of it, the reconciliation that even at my best, I'm not good enough for this particular victory. So do you want to have that mountain of pain, or do you want to stay at home and sit on the couch and have no pain, but you don't have that experience? Like, which is better? I think the mountain of pain is better than the sitting on the couch with the double stuffs.
Right.
I don't mean anything personal about the double stuffs.
Well, you could also have the mountain of pain with double stuffs would be what I try to do. Can you do that?
You could totally do that.
Right.
When you're reconciling the fact that you didn't win, you have a couple of double stuffs. Why
right.
the hell
So
not?
the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, and in the end, it probably comes down to personal tolerance, right? So I think there are times where you say, I'm almost surely headed for the mountain of pain with almost no chance of success. Then you have to bail. That's the part that people leave out of, like, never quit, never give up. When the odds become like absurdly against
Right.
you, where you're like, this is ridiculous.
So,
I have no evidence that I can achieve this.
Right. Yeah, you
And
want to
and
find
it's-
an
and it's like,
exciting
say
goal that's within the realm of possibility, right? Yeah.
Like if you're running a business that is just a disaster, never give up, never quit is terrible advice at that time, right? You know what I mean? Like it's like, and it's bleeding your bank account.
Yeah. If I'm in my
Like-
50s and I've never played much basketball,
Right.
I can't say I want to make an start on an NBA team, and like that's going to be my life goals from now on. That's
Right. You're
absurd.
like, you're headed for failure and with expense. And
Yeah, total frustration.
just have the double stuffs in that case. But so that depending on the goal, or the odds, and which could shift, right? You could be like, I have a pretty good shot at this, and circumstances could come up where you're like, my odds are getting lower and lower. Like a business is a good example.
Yeah, there's a
it's
point where you have to switch gears, pivot,
Right.
as they say in the startup
right.
world.
But what
try
always
something
annoys
else.
me about most advice that's out there is this subtlety's often lost, right? It's always
Right.
go 1,000%. And don't
Well, the
give
most
up
viral ideas are strongly stated concepts. If you
Yeah.
add nuance, that doesn't travel. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not a great slogan. You can't put a poster on like, well, I'm picturing some inspirational poster, and it's like, give it all you've got up to a certain point, and then when the odds start looking against you, then maybe back off. Like, that's not a great poster. That's probably not going to do great
Yeah.
sales.
And if you have a controversial statement, women are great, men suck, and you put that out there, there's women who are going to like that, so it's going to travel. And then there's might be some men who don't like it, and that creates energy and controversy. And you know what I mean? So those kind of concepts travel more than a more nuanced
Like
concept.
nuance and subtlety don't travel.
Doesn't travel because it takes energy for people to think about it. People don't like to spend energy. So
Well, again, we might have mentioned, but right now the news stations are like that, right? I mean,
Yes.
everyone says like, why can't we have unbiased news anymore? And it's like, this is the answer, right? People won't watch it, right? People, if
No.
people will watch it, then they'd have it. I'm sure if there was evidence, if networks had evidence that this was a gaping hole that lots of viewers would want, they'd put one out there.
right.
They could do it easily, but I think they probably keep looking into it and saying people don't want it. They don't want subtlety or nuance. They want to hear their point of view, and that's what they're going to put out there.
Here's the other thing I noticed, Dan. I get a lot of my news from Twitter. Whoever's writing the news, they literally can create the news. So here's what they do. They just post something and they say, people know what it was? They just did it. White women are outraged at the Super Bowl halftime show. They just put a blanket statement like that, and then they get stuff happening on Twitter back and forth. Yes, it is. No, they're not. Blah, 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 blah. But they can just say whatever they want to create some kind of controversy.
Right.
And I'm like, really? I mean, have they polled all the white women in the United States and found out what percentage are outraged by the
I've
Super
noticed
Bowl?
that recently too. I mean,
So
I'm sure a
annoying.
lot of people have noticed it, but for me, it's become glaringly clear because all they need out of millions of tweets,
They find two tweets.
They just had to find two,
Yeah.
and they go, "This person said this and this," and I'm aware of it.
And you know what? If they can't find two tweets,
Yeah.
they'll create two accounts and make the two
Yeah,
tweets.
right.
Yeah.
But even me being aware of it, not an idiot, I can fall for it still. Like, I'll read
Right.
something like that and be like, "Oh, how?" I'll have that momentary reaction of like, "Wait, people are mad about that halftime show? Give me a break," And I start getting mad, and then I have to remember, like, "Oh, wait, this probably isn't even
It's
happening."
all fantasy.
Yeah.
It's literally professional wrestling has taken over all of the
But I
journalism.
feel like if I'm momentarily getting mad at different headlines and I'm talking about it on a podcast, it must be really bad for, you know what I mean? Like,
the average person's getting sucked up into it,
Yeah.
for sure.
really badly.
Yeah.
And getting really mad, and then they lash back the other way, and they're basically creating more material for the other side. And,
Yeah. And they create a storm out of absolutely nothing.
yeah. And the people, again, there's so many news outlets. There's little, you read a news story and you're like, what am I reading? Like, it's not just like it's the New York Times or USA Today. You're like, it's something I never even heard of. Like there's
Oh,
so
right.
many of those of websites and outlets out there that they need their content. You know what I mean? Like they need to put stuff out there. They need their clicks.
They need their
And they're
clicks.
like,
It's all
so they
about
don't
the
care
clicks,
at all.
right?
They don't care at all. They, if it's like a fake story or a fake controversy,
They don't care at all.
They're glad.
It's all about the clicks, and it's maddening.
And everyone seems to agree with what we're saying, but then it never stops. You know what I mean? Everyone's like, you're right. That's all creative. But then it doesn't seem to help. People are still mad and still read fake stories and still get angry. And
Right.
but everyone seems to agree. They're like, oh yeah, it's all fake. It's all created. Why can't we have a neutral news site? Why can't, everyone seems to agree, but then they must not be because it doesn't change.
I think it's an arms race. So I think what's going to happen is, these so-called news outlets are pushing these evolutionarily underpinned buttons to get people excited, and they're using less and less decorum. So the people who, or the outlets that use the least amount of discretion are winning probably. So it's just a spiral to the bottom, I would think. I don't know how it's ever going to change.
Yeah.
But I will say this, they're all losing credibility. I don't believe anything I read anywhere anymore. New York Times, Wall Street Journal, it doesn't matter who's putting something out. I take it all with a grain of salt.
I'm getting hit. I was noticing that my news feed now when I log in is like 3/4 coronavirus.
Yeah?
Not to get back to coronavirus, but you know what I mean? Like, I guess that's getting clicks. I
Yeah.
think people are excited about it.
It's about
And so
survival.
everything is, like, are we all going to die is getting clicks now. So they're just like relating everything they can to coronavirus.
Then it'll be gone next week when something sexier comes up.
Yeah.
They won't even talk about coronavirus anymore. 'Cause
We-
remember
again,
when
we're
we pulled out of Syria, and look, it's going to be World War III. No, Turkey is going to create a war. I've never heard anything about that since then.
The funny thing is when these things disappear, no one ever says like, what happened to that story? Like, it's, you know what I mean? Like, it disappears from people's mind, and they never,
right.
and they never learn a lesson. They're never like, hey, wait, that
Then
was like
we
a
were
big
going to go to
thing.
war with Iran. Remember that? That was like 2 weeks ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was all over the place. World War
it
III
was the
again.
beginning of
and then
January. It
it's
was like, yeah,
gone.
World War III.
It's over. Now it's coronavirus.
Yeah, and
It'll
we've
be-
also been alive, and actually you didn't have to be alive that long. How long ago we had swine flu and bird flu, and even with the pandemics, we've had a bunch, right, in the last few years.
I think so.
And Ebola,
SARS.
they were all coming to get us.
Uh,
Again, this is going to look foolish
Legionnaire's disease.
if
that
we
was
get
a big one back
if we
when.
get wiped out.
Yeah. Yeah, you can have egg on your face if we all die.
Yeah, I'll be lying there in the hospital bed like, boy, this is awkward. The hospital tent, the cot in the massive tent in the middle of the football field. Someone's going to limp over like, I heard your podcast and look at you now. And be like, yeah. Leave me alone. Leave me
That would
alone.
be
I'm in a hospital tent
Yeah.
in a pandemic. But, yeah, so it's It's just another thing, but no one ever learns, right? It'll just keep going.
They don't learn.
Yeah.
Oh, so back to the film.
Yeah. This is all on the top, a subheading. The main topic is this film.
Right. And so we went everywhere with these guys. So Zoran Amar is the director of the film. Sasha is the cinematographer. He's an amazing cameraman, as you see if you look at it. And Rade is the guy who's doing the editing. And he's an amazing editor,
So I already thought the video clips looked great.
Yeah?
You know what I mean? Like they just looked like award-winning. You know, like they were just, I don't even know. I'm not familiar enough to know why they're great. But like however they're framed or however they're edited together was very effective.
I think so. Yeah.
Right. And then, like I said, you had a great camera presence, I thought. Like just
thank
spoke
you, Dan.
clearly and made coherent points without.
What I did was I listened to Tin Nguyen and I used my charismatic personality that I break out every once in a while.
Right, because it's stored up because you have no charisma in the gym.
Once a week.
And so,
So I get it out. I get an hour's worth of charisma in me, Dan, per week. Yeah. And then that's it.
So that was all good. And it's very early, right? I think there's going to be lots of changes and edits.
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do with it. Let me tell you, it's a lot of pressure.
Do you not have input?
Not really. No, the only input I have is I just live my life and they ask me questions and I try to answer them.
But you don't, at this point, I'm interested in this a little. You're not able to like say like, hey, I think this should be more like this, or, you know, like.
Maybe, Dan, but what happens is, you know, they have like 3 years of footage. And then they got to take all these pieces and create a compelling story out of it. And I think it's so challenging and complex that I don't know what I could tell them. You know what I mean? Like we could talk in general terms, but it's supposed to be honest too. It's like we're not like fabricating something.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So, and my problem is, as anyone who's listening to this podcast knows, every week I come up with some new crazy idea. My philosophy hasn't been etched in stone 3 years ago. Like I'm always thinking about things, and things change a little bit, and I start emphasizing process maybe a little bit more than I did before, and all these different things happen.
Or drop things out.
Things out. So I don't know how that affects the film, you know.
Which is in itself a philosophy, isn't it? Right?
I think it is. I think it's a good one.
Like to update your own. I think it's actually important. I think there's people.
It's huge.
I read a thing. I'm sorry, I forgot who it was. I think it might have been a guest of Tim Ferriss or something like this, but I can't remember who. But they were saying one of the big problems with people is that they identify, probably everyone listening, they say, how do you describe yourself? And they identify themselves in certain ways.
Okay.
And they don't revisit it. And they don't think, am I really like that anymore? You know, so they'll be like, I'm a person who does this and this. I like this and that. I respond this way and that way. And, it can be like, I don't take crap from people, or I'm very honest, or whatever it is. And they never revisit their own self-view. And so they just say it, like that's who I am. And they don't think, is that true anymore? You know what I mean? Like, am I still like that? And that's a valuable thing to do. So you can have a personal philosophy of like, I just think maybe I go 110% at everything. And you never revisit it and say, one, do I still want to do that? And two, is that even true? Am I still going 110% everything? You're just sort of saying it mindlessly. So part of, I think, what you do is you do revisit it. You do think like,
I do, and I try to think about.
Is this still what I'm like? Is this still my philosophy?
Not so much what am I like. Yeah, do I still believe this? I think is how I would put it, and that's why I resist labels. Oh, you're eating paleo. No, I'm just eating what I think works for me, and I'm probably changing it over time. I think the danger of labeling yourself is now you stop thinking. And now you accept whatever that group thinks, and that group think might change, and now you have to change because the group is changing.
Right.
The
big Democrat Republican now is big. People identify with one or the other, and it's a huge.
Or are you a liberal? Are you a progressive? Are you a classical liberal? Or are you? I don't know what a lot of these terms mean, Dan. A neocon.
But people
alt-right.
name themselves one of these, and then they're locked in, like you said.
You're kind of
then-
locked in, and
Yeah.
you stop thinking about the different subjects, you know, the different issues,
Right.
you know, which is dumb
It's
because
easier.
it's
right?
a
I think
hell
that's
of a
why
lot
people do
easier.
it.
Hell of a lot easier. Yeah. But I prefer to think about each issue on its own merits. I think that's takes a lot more energy, but I'm more comfortable. with
Yeah,
doing
I've
things
always
that
felt
way.
like you could say I agree with this group on these issues without saying I'm one of this group, like
Yeah. And people use it to pinhole you and to minimize you. They go, "Oh,
right.
you're a Atkins diet guy. Oh, okay. I see what you're up to."
Oh, CrossFit.
Yeah.
All right.
And they just want to shove
That's the
you
thing.
in
It can be one thing too,
category.
and they act like they know every. It can be like,
Right.
oh, cyclist. Oh, I see.
I
What
was
kind of-
talking
it's
to
like,
a
wait, I
person-
told you I rode my bike to work, and like you think you know my whole personality
Oh,
now.
right.
Like, do you know what I mean? It'll be like, oh, one of those bike guys. All right.
Somebody asked me, they go, "Oh, so what is your jiu-jitsu approach, Brazilian jiu-jitsu? What's your style like? Do you do inversions and blah, blah, blah?" And I go, I said, for no-gi, the basic style, the probably the optimal approach seems to be to get to back control because you get a good chance of finishing. If you don't finish, you at least get the points for getting back control. And they go, "Oh, you're a points guy." I found that so annoying. I'm a points guy. No, I'm telling you what the optimal approach to winning is.
Right.
And I submit people with rear naked chokes. Yeah, that's not being a points guy. I found it so annoying. They were trying to pigeonhole me in my
Right.
jiu-jitsu style. How wacky is that? When I'm telling them, you know what my style is? It's the optimal style. Whatever the best strategy is, that's what I'm going to use. If we find a better strategy, I'm going to change to that.
Right. But people, it's like they can't help it. There's like almost something inside people that want to classify everyone and want to put people in boxes.
Yeah, they want a heuristic so they don't have to think anymore.
To me,
It's a
one
shortcut.
of the funniest examples is from the dawn of MMA, which a lot of people give a lot of credit to Bruce Lee, right? Like he came up with this philosophy of take what works,
Yeah.
and he open-minded enough to say these boxers could win in a fight, and
Yeah.
and he was like, I'm going to try to make my own style, Jeet Kune Do, which is take what works.
Yeah.
And then some of the stuff that he took that he thought worked well, like trapping, doesn't necessarily work that well in the long run.
I think trapping, right. I think trapping works. It's so funny that you brought up trapping, Dan, because I was overtraining with Mark Dellagrotte at Sityodtong in Somerville, the great Mark Dellagrotte, amazing teacher. And we were doing a little bit of trapping stuff. And the idea is that kind of stuff can work, but you can't do it in a static fashion. So the way you see it, where a person's standing perfectly still,
Right.
trapping with their arms, doesn't work. But, if you move your body and trap their arm a little bit, then it can work. You know what I
Right.
mean? And that's the funny thing about martial arts. Almost every technique can work if it's applied the right way at the right time by the right martial artist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they thought for a while, oh, you can't do those spinning kicks. And then in the UFC,
There we
people
go.
started knocking people that F out with spinning kicks. Oh, I guess those things really work now. And
Right. That's why you have to be careful of saying any style's like, oh, that's worthless or
Right.
that's garbage. Someone who's very, very good at it and very, very athletic could get you with one of those
Right.
things, So
and Tony Ferguson, I think, does some of that trapping stuff. And he's one of the most dangerous fighters in
amazing.
the UFC.
But that was to my point that
Yeah.
so Bruce Lee had this style Jeet Kune Do, and the
Right.
whole idea was like it should advance and evolve.
Yeah.
And he said what it was in whatever it was, 1972 or
Mm.
making up the year. And there are people, a lot of his fans to this day, like are rigidly
That's funny,
argue
right?
like, no, what he said was the best. And people are like, well, no, I mean, trapping's evolved. Like they hear you say, well, maybe not the way he taught it. And they'd be like, no, it is the way he taught it. Like
It's almost religious.
yeah,
right?
like,
It's
but-
so dogmatic.
but yeah, like exact opposite of what he was teaching, right? It was
Yeah.
like, they're like, we will not change this philosophy of take what works.
they're
no matter-
radical
yeah.
fundamentalists about
Yeah.
evolving your technique.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they won't evolve it at all
Yeah.
in service to that. And sort of like a perfect example of like just this urge to put things in a box and like not change it and, refuse to accept change to your beliefs. even if the belief is you should change your beliefs.
Right.
You should adjust your beliefs.
Well, that's the problem. I mean, the ideas that are the most viral, the things that create ideology, are things that are rigid and probably untrue and overstated. Those things resonate with people, and stay with people because it's simpler. Yeah, that's what we were saying.
So we should do more of that.
We should do way more of that.
A lot exaggerated. We should get rid of all nuance and
get rid of all nuance.
Start exaggerating.
People like it.
Yeah, I know.
I think that's what's holding us back. We're too nuanced.
It could be.
Yeah.
It's hard to do that, though, if it's not your nature. It has to be.
It's so hard, right?
Yeah.
I wish I could do that. I found also that if you think about some of the best self-promoters, the one thing they all have in common is they're kind of full of shit. They're bullshitters. Yeah. Like either Tony Robbins, can you think of a bigger BSer than Tony Robbins?
No. But
his story, remember his story, Dan? I've bought a lot of his books. I've purchased a lot of his products, listened to a lot of his.
And again, to be fair, I'm sure there's many occasions he gives out good advice, right? Because
he does have good advice.
Yeah.
But it's on a foundation of BS. So he used to say, I was living in a 300 square foot apartment, washing my dishes in the bathtub, and now I live in a castle. Like that was his rags to riches story. And I used to always think, why is he washing his dishes in the bathtub? He doesn't have a kitchen sink? That makes zero sense. He doesn't have a bathroom sink? He just has a bathtub. So that's the only water receptacle in the apartment. It's a lie.
Maybe he was taking a bath while washing the dishes.
He's doing a Kramer.
Yeah. Just to be efficient, yeah.
So it's manifestly absurd and untrue. Nobody questions him on it, right? It's so weird, isn't it? And then people do, this is my pet peeve. So what did we call this Cranky Old Man Minute we were going to do? This is my Cranky Old Man Minute. Okay. So there's another podcaster named Lewis Howes who's got this, I think it's called, what is it called? School of Excellence or something. It's a very popular podcast, super successful. So you know what his bona fides are, Dan? Former professional football player. So when I say those three words, former professional football player, what immediately jumps into your brain?
The NFL.
The NFL. It wasn't the NFL.
Not,
yeah. So what else could it be if it's not the NFL?
Oh, the CFL?
CFL, Canadian Football League. So 99% of your brain says NFL. Then if I prompt you, 1% of your brain can come up with CFL. It wasn't even the CFL. It wasn't the Italian Football League.
XFL?
Not the XFL. Keep going.
Something European? I can't.
Arena football.
Oh, I forgot about it.
You forgot about arena football.
Yeah.
So when he says former professional football player, he's lying because 99.9% of the people think NFL. He doesn't say former arena football player. He says professional football player. So is that a lie or is that not a lie?
It's a lie.
It's a lie that's technically,
right,
quotation marks, true. So annoying.
Right. Like Tony Robbins might have washed his dishes in the tub.
Because he's insane.
Or just because of whatever reason.
I don't think he did.
But that's what I'm saying.
Then here's another guy.
I feel like I can't do it before you. Like, can you? Like, I feel like I couldn't say former football player if I was a former arena football player. Like, I'd have to say.
I always say Masters world champion. I got to get that Masters in there because God forbid anybody thinks it was in the adult division. That would be wrong. It would be deceitful. I even say Masters 6 world champion.
Right. But it might benefit you to not say that.
It would totally benefit me not to say it.
Yeah.
But I'd rather be crystal clear. Oh, so Tim Ferriss, another huge podcast guy, right? One of his claims to fame, he doesn't even mention it anymore because he's so embarrassed by it because he knows it's such baloney. He said he was a Kung Fu world champion. So what he essentially did is he went to some small part of China where they had like 3 guys participating in some Kung Fu event that was considered a world championship. And part of it was they were competing on a platform. And if you got pushed off the platform, you would lose. So it was like sort of like kickboxing with pushing
like
off a platform. But it was kickboxing too.
Yeah.
So he goes over there and he uses sort of the American wrestling weight cutting techniques which these poor Chinese guys have no idea about. So he gets out there, and he's 15 pounds heavier than the other guys, and he pushes them off the platform, and now he's a world champion. So then he was riding that accolade for a while, which I don't hear it anymore. But that's not really – that's a little deceptive, don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the back of my mind, though, I'm thinking all these guys are like, well, they have $100 million and up and live in castles.
They're super
So what are we doing? Why
Yeah.
are we being honest?
Right. That's right.
We
That's
gotta
why I
stop.
live in
We
a
gotta
lovely
stop.
but modest place in
We've got
Norwood.
to stop this honesty.
We got to start getting dishonest.
That's the lesson of this
That's
podcast.
the big takeaway. Yeah, we're coming up on time. The big takeaway is we all need to bullshit more. We're not bullshitting enough.
Stop being honest.
Stop being honest. Bullshit a little bit more.
Exaggerate.
Be technically honest.
Right. So you can't get arrested.
That seems to be the best lies, the ones that you can like technically explain as true. But they're the most deceptive lies, right?
Yeah.
It's terrible. So that's a big takeaway. The other one was the Kickstarter.
We'll talk more about that next time.
Yeah,
because
you
we
guys
didn't
got to
really-
get on there. Check it out on Kickstarter.com.
How could they like find it?
They'll find it on Facebook. I'll send an email out
Or what
about
do they
it.
search for? Like Invincible Mind?
Invincible. If you go to Kickstarter, I think, and search for Invincible Mind. Let me Google it right now. See if it comes up. So I'm going to say, and I'm going to send out an email to people. And do you know what invincible means, Dan?
I think so. It's when you can't be seen. Is that right?
That's what Tommy Hearn said about Marvin Hagler. No man is invisible. And he meant invincible, I think. It means unconquerable. Yeah. There it is. So if you put Kickstarter Invincible Mind in Google, the first thing that comes up there is our Kickstarter page.
And so the clip now, also to be clear, is like 4 minutes. So
Yeah.
it's not a big, it's not an hour and a half commitment
No, it's 4
to watch
minutes,
it now. I
and
watched
it goes
4
by
minutes.
pretty quick, right?
And I know we're out of time, but maybe worth mentioning who is prominently featured in the
Well, it starts with
documentary.
me. My head looks like it's going to explode. I'm doing handstand push-ups. I don't know why they started with that. And, yeah, a lot of guys are in it. Tyler King, Tom Egan is in it. Myself, of course. I think my son is in it. John Burke. Ebrahim Aziz. Jesse McElligott. I think that's
Matt Tullos?
Matt Tullos. Yep.
We're maybe forgetting a few, but
I'm forgetting a few, but some of those guys already put it online and shared it, which is really nice of them. And I think if you watch these 4 minutes, you'll get something out of it. I think you thought it was good, right?
yeah.
Yeah, it's about fighting, about competing in jiu-jitsu, about winning and losing.
Even the 4 minutes is kind of a fun watch.
It is, because they got clips of fights. It's pretty exciting. They did an amazing job of editing and putting it all together. Yeah. And I'm out in the woods someplace babbling about fighting. There's Jesse McElligott just won a fight by arm triangle. And he collapses exhaustion against the cage. It's pretty good.
It's fun.
Yeah, it's fun. So check that out.
It went fast today. This
Start
went
bullshitting
fast.
more. Don't worry about the coronavirus. And that's about it, yeah. And all our super fans, I think we ran out of time. I won't be able to shout out to them, but
Next
thank
time.
you guys for your support.
Share it again. You'll get the shout out for sure next time.
For sure. And we'll talk to you next week. Thanks so much.